Psalm 84:10 says, I had rather be a doorkeeper in the house of God than to dwell in the tents of wickedness. Truly, it is an honor and privilege to be allowed to serve the God of heaven. I trust that your heart's desire is to be his servant and to be used of the Lord to help those who attend LVBC to worship Jesus Christ. Your service in this area of ministry can be a tremendous blessing to me as I seek to preach the Word of God to the congregation on a weekly basis. Your greeting will usually be the first one that a guest in our services will receive. Your spirit-filled attitude could make a difference in someone's eternity by making it easy for them to return to this church and continue to hear the preaching of God's Word. I thank each of you who have made the decision to serve the Lord as an usher here. I trust you will take this training seriously and understand the impact that you have upon the services by carrying out your responsibilities.
Welcome to the ushering ministry at Lehigh Valley Baptist Church. You have been selected to help share the responsibilities of this group, whose task is to provide a friendly, courteous, kind, helpful, and sometimes firm service for our members and guests. This training video has been prepared to serve as a guide, and it also contains instructions which will be helpful for you as a member of our team. We have also listed a few situations which you may encounter as you go about your duties as usher and their possible solutions. We cannot possibly foresee or even go over all the problems you may face as an usher. With your cooperation, we shall work as a team in close harmony with one goal in mind. That goal is to serve the Lord.
What is an usher? A watchman. An usher will anticipate problems as they come up, and he will watch for disturbances and quiet them in the quickest, most diplomatic way possible. When serving as an usher before a service, the usher needs to focus on ushering, unless, of course, an emergency occurs, and not get caught up in conversations with friends and other church members. An usher needs to think usher, a servant. There are many ways an usher can serve the congregation. Many of these ways will be discussed as we continue this video. A host. Just as a man tries to make a guest in his home feel welcome and comfortable, he also must see that the visitors in his church feel welcome and have as comfortable of a place as possible. He should make every visitor feel welcome as an honored guest. When people walk into the church for the first time, the usher that greets them is, to them, the church. The opinions they are forming are of the church. The visitor will be in a much better attitude and frame of mind to hear the sermon if he has been warmly greeted by an usher. He will have formed a good opinion of the church soon after his arrival because of the polite gentleman who helped him as he came in. Before we go into the specific usher roles in this video, let's go over a few things to think about before committing to being an usher. Number 1, your heart is doing it for Christ. If your heart is not into it, it will show quickly, and you won't be an effective usher and a testimony for the Lord. Number 2, your family is supportive. Being an usher requires some sacrifice and time and perhaps not sitting with your family during a service. There are some positions that require you to be at a service a half hour before it begins. All positions will require you to be at an area until the preaching begins. Some roles require being on security duty in the foyer or parking lot, which doesn't allow you to sit with your family during the service. Your wardrobe attire is satisfactory. An usher does not need to be expensively dressed, but he must always be neat with his hair combed, shoes shined, and wearing a coat and tie. During the warmer months, an usher does not have to wear a coat when outside door duty or during a midweek service, but he should still wear a tie and be neat. An usher is a representation of Jesus Christ and representation of the church. An usher should always be prepared to make a good first impression. As doorkeepers in God's house at Lehigh Valley Baptist Church, we have many doors to keep. To ensure those doors are kept and that other responsibilities are done, we have various numbers given to each assignment and various tasks for each of them. We'll go over these now and cover some of these tasks and other aspects of being an usher along the way. Outside door usher, number 8 position. The doorkeeper for the outside door of the main foyer is often the first person a visitor or church member will see when they attend a church service. This position, which is marked as number 8 on the usher schedule, has many responsibilities. Because people start entering into the church building much earlier than the service begins, the usher assigned to this door must be in place a half hour before the start of time of a service. So on a Sunday morning, the usher must be in position at 8:30, on a Sunday night by 5:30, and on a Wednesday night by 6:30. Since people still arrive after a service begins, this usher must stay in position until relieved by the usher doing security duty. For Sunday school, that could mean leaving the post around 9:10 and then returning between 9:45 and 9:50. For preaching services, this could mean being at the position until the preaching begins. One of the responsibilities of this usher is to put the American flag and the Baptist flag in the morning and taking it down in the evening. If it's raining or rain is in the forecast for the day, the flags don't need to be raised. In the evening, this usher is responsible to take down the flags and put them away appropriately. The main responsibility for this usher is to greet folks as they enter the church building and open the outside door for them to enter the building. The greeting should be a warm smile, a friendly greeting, and, if appropriate, a handshake. During times of illness, people will be less reluctant to shake hands, so don't force a handshake if there seems to be hesitation or reluctance. When shaking hands, the usher's handshake should match the handshake of the guest. If the guest has a good, firm handshake, respond likewise. If they have a soft handshake, again, respond likewise. Don't give them a bone-crushing handshake. These handshaking tips apply to ushers in any position. As guests come, try to greet them by name as best as possible. If you don't recognize someone and suspect that they might be a first-time visitor, ask them if they have been here before. That can get tricky, as a person might have been coming for a while, and you might offend them if you bluntly ask if this is their first time attending a service at LVBC. One thing you might want to do as you see them coming as they are in the parking lot is ask a fellow usher if they know them. If you still aren't sure, one approach would be to start by saying something like, "Hi, my name is blank. I haven't met you. What is your name?" Hopefully, by starting out with a statement like this, it will help to ensure the conversation to find out if they are visiting for the first time. If you still aren't sure, one approach would be by starting to say something like, "Hi, my name is blank. I haven't met you. What is your name?" Hopefully, by starting out with a statement like this will help you in the ensuing conversation to find out if they are visiting for the first time. If the guests are first-time visitors, please direct them to the Welcome Center. This could be by handing them off to the usher in the foyer or taking them directly to the Welcome Center. If no one is in the Welcome Center, proceed by giving them a visitor's packet and helping them as much as possible. Even if you might miss opening the door for other guests, it is better to make a first-time visitor feel welcome and not a bother to your schedule. At this position, there can be many other needs, in particular when it's raining. Be prepared to help people where needed. The canopy is a huge blessing to help on rainy days, but the driver will need to stop and walk in the rain. For some, it could mean offering an umbrella to them when they drop off the others in the car. For others, it might mean going to the parking lot with an umbrella and escorting them in. And for others, it might mean parking their car. If you need to leave the door to help others, try to find other ushers that cover the door as you assist someone. You may encounter situations where someone visits that has a special need. Do your best to accommodate them and make them feel welcome. Again, seek the assistance of another usher and another man if you need help. At this position, you will see things or hear things that occur as people enter into the building or get dropped off. Be careful about not being a talebearer about those situations. This usher should be aware of any changes to the normal course of action for the services. Occasionally, Sunday school for the adults and teens is in the auditorium, so it's important to tell people as they enter the building what changes are occurring. Also, when there are church fellowships and people bringing food, this usher should be aware of where food items should go and tell that to the guests as they enter. The guests may also need help in getting food out of their cars, so this usher should be prepared to help them. During the spring and fall months of the year, the second door could be propped open as the heat, humidity, or cold shouldn't negatively impact the temperature of the foyer. During the warmer and colder months, there should be another usher that keeps that door so that the cold or hot air doesn't circulate into the foyer and thus impact the temperature in the foyer and the auditorium. This leads us to the role of the usher in the foyer. Foyer position number 6. The usher assigned to this position can have many roles during an assignment. Many times they are an aid to the outside usher and may need to open and close the second entrance door during warmer and colder months. If not working the doors, this usher should stand in the foyer near the Welcome Center. It is important for this usher to be at his post 25 to 30 minutes before a preaching service or a Sunday school begin. Before the morning service, this usher should get to their post about 9:50 to 9:55 a.m. One of the main roles for this usher is to assist people, especially first-time guests. First-time guests should be escorted to the Welcome Center. If there is no lady present behind the Welcome Center, this usher needs to make sure that the guest gets a welcome packet and gets assistance for any needs. As first-time guests arrive, they may need assistance as to where to go. If they are arriving for Sunday school, they will need some guidance. If they have children, this usher will want to escort the children and the parents to their specific class. Thus, it is imperative that this usher knows where the various Sunday school classes meet. For example, any children in 1st through 6th grades meet up in the lunchroom for an opening. If you have some guests in this age range, please take them up to the lunchroom and connect them with a teacher. Don't leave them until doing that. Remember, they are probably nervous about coming to a place they have never been to, and the parents are also nervous for them. For the adults, take them up to the chapel and talk to them about the concepts of the table and the various options. Connect them with a table leader of the table type they would like to attend. Most times, a visiting couple like to go to a couple's table. If a family comes to worship service with a nursery age or a small child, tactfully go over the various options for them. Remember, a first-time visitor is probably not too keen on having their babies or infants going to a nursery or children's class that they know nothing about, and especially one at the end of the building. Tell them about the child training room off of the auditorium, and they could sit in there for the entire service, or they could sit in the auditorium near the room and go there if their infants have issues. This usher monitors the foyer before the service as it begins. Make sure the doors going to the auditorium are closed as the service begins and any noise in the foyer tactfully addressed. Once the service starts, there are generally many people that are late for the service. Some have already gotten to their seats, but others are just arriving. In general, don't open the doors to have people enter into the auditorium during a prayer time or a special music. This can be distracting, as usually when people enter the auditorium, many eyes of those in the auditorium see them, and thus they lose their focus. As latecomers come, especially on Sunday mornings, be aware of the available seating. Talk to the inside ushers or the head usher to see what is available. In other words, if a family of 5 comes in, know if there's room in the organ side of the auditorium, or should they be directed to the door entrance by the bookstore so they can enter and go to the center of the piano side. Let's now talk about the ushers at the door going to the auditorium. Inside door ushers. Number 1. At the door by Book Heaven, at the door near the Welcome Center. During Sunday morning and evening services, we have an usher at the main doors going into the auditorium. They both have basically the same functions, so we'll cover them both now. During Sunday morning and evening services, we have an usher at the main doors going into the auditorium. The usher at number 1. Ushers stand outside the door by Book Heaven, while usher number 5 stands inside the door near the Welcome Center. At these positions, these ushers can greet guests as they come into the service, and they can work with the inside auditorium ushers to find seating. They should be aware of available seating in the auditorium, especially in their area, so they can direct guests to the available seatings. The number 5 usher should be ready to seat guests in the rightmost sections of the auditorium. These ushers should be at their post 15 to 20 minutes prior to the service in the auditorium. Once the service starts, they should make sure the respective doors are closed. As guests arrive late, do not open the doors during prayer time or special music. Inside auditorium ushers. Number 2, by the sound booth. Number 3, left and center sections. Number 4, center and right sections. These ushers primarily have the same duty, so we'll cover them now. The main function of the ushers in these positions is to monitor their areas for available seatings. The usher should know what seating is available, so when guests, especially latecomers, arrive, they can be seated seamlessly. The usher should also be greeting guests and especially visitors, and getting to know who is in their area. This can be helpful if someone comes into the service and is looking around for their family. A well-prepared usher can be an asset to them and direct them to where their family is seated. Generally, guests will find their own seating until the service begins. However, if a section gets full, an usher can direct them to available seating. When the service begins and latecomers enter into the auditorium, the usher should direct them to available seating, which could be with other family members. Again, a well-prepared usher knows what seating is available and can easily guide the guests to their seat. The ushers should be communicating the availability of seating in their area to their neighboring ushers and to the head usher. This will help the head usher and the ushers at the door to know what area to send guests when they arrive. In scanning available seats, the usher should be aware of the seats that are reserved by putting Bibles, hymnals, or other materials in the chair. It will be a touchy and possibly offensive situation if guests get seated into seats which others have reserved. These ushers should be at their post 15 to 20 minutes prior to the service of the auditorium. The ushers should position themselves outside their area when not monitoring their area for seats or greeting guests. They should stay at their post until just before the preaching. They may be needed in their area to handle emergency needs or, again, helping seat latecomers. They also may need to tactfully inform people who are crowding the aisles to make room for people, and once the service is ready to begin, to disband to their seats. This leads us to the role of the head usher for the worship service. Head usher number 7. For each service, a man is assigned as the head usher. His role is to ensure everything is being done decently and in order. The duties of the head usher range from making sure the bathrooms are presentable to making sure all guests for the service have gotten to their seats and are ready to worship the Lord. Let's go through many of the responsibility of this usher in some detail. The man assigned to this position must arrive a half hour prior to a worship service. This gives him time to go throughout the building and auditorium and checking on several things. He should check that all the bathrooms are presentable, especially the ones by the auditorium, and especially on a Sunday morning. This may include getting trash taken out and checking the toilets. The trash containers by drinking fountains in the foyer should be also checked, as well as the availability of cups above the drinking fountain. He should make sure the necessary outside doors are unlocked. This includes the door at the EBA entrance, the office door, and the front doors of the foyer. He should make sure the door to the nursery is unlocked. The key is under the welcome center. While checking on that door, he should get the number 20 pager. This number will be paged by a nursery worker if they have a need for an usher. For example, they might need additional help. Thus, the head usher or a security person should always have this pager during a service. He should also check to make sure the necessary lighting is on the area that will be used during that service. This includes the children's class areas. He should do some checking in the auditorium to make sure the pew chairs are aligned as best as possible. While doing this, he may find trash or other items in the chairs which may need to be dealt with. He should make sure the blinds on the outside windows are uniform, and in the summer evening services, the ones by the piano are probably pulled down. Also, if the temperature in the auditorium or foyer seems to be too hot or cold, he should check the thermostat and check with pastor or a staff member to see if they should be changed. On a Wednesday night, when there is no usher at the door going to the auditorium, going into the auditorium, lecterns should be placed at the 2 entrances to the auditorium with prayer sheets. As with main door at the foyer ushers, the head usher needs to be aware of any changes to the normal schedule for the day. Before a Sunday school service, this usher should make sure an usher is at the EBA door, 1 of the main door, number 8, and in the foyer, number 6. When the number 6 and number 8 ushers go to the respective Sunday school classes, he will be responsible for handling latecomers and, unless a separate security guy is available, keeping an eye on the parking lot. After the main door and foyer ushers return to their Sunday school classes, the head usher should turn his focus to ensuring that the ushers for the inside doors and inside the auditorium are starting to get in their positions. Some of these ushers may arrive a little later than 10 a.m. as they are leaving Sunday school classes they taught or couldn't easily leave. The head usher may need to cover these areas until the assigned ushers arrive. On a Sunday evening, the head usher should make sure that the foyer and main auditorium ushers are in place, and if they aren't present, make sure these areas are covered. The head usher should now mainly focus on the activity in the auditorium. If there are special events going on like Faith Promise Sundays, he should talk to the pastor on how the usher should handle the situation. He may need to deliver some mail that is on the usher table if no other usher or man is doing that. He definitely should be watching out for the seating of the guest and periodically touching base with the inside ushers on the availability of seating in their areas. A head usher who has been focused and attentive to what has been going on as guests are getting seated in the auditorium will be prepared for handling latecomers in most situations when they arrive. During the preaching service, the head usher should make sure that there is a man on security in the foyer and 1 in the parking lot. Depending on the service, especially the evening services, the head usher may have 1 or both of these roles. After the preaching is done and the congregation is dismissed, the head usher should make sure the main auditorium doors are opened. If it is raining after the service, he should make sure the men are helping with any weather-related needs. He may also need to make sure those with special needs are getting out of the building successfully. On a Sunday night, the head usher should go back to the Bible Institute room after the service and escort a key man around the building to collect for the deacons to count. Having public services where anyone can attend is great, but occasionally someone will come into the building who appears they could have an ulterior motive. These cases must be handled carefully, as their motives might be misread. But if the head usher is aware of the situation, he should assign an usher to watch the individual, especially after a service. Occasionally, some unexpected situations will occur. This can range from a medical emergency to problems in a bathroom. If the situation isn't being attended by a necessary people, a head usher needs to make sure the appropriate people are contacted. For a medical emergency, that could mean getting one of the medical professionals in attendance involved in the situation. For each service, a count of those in attendance should be done. This leads us to the next position, count and water. The usher assigned to this position could have many different duties. It could also be, especially on a Wednesday night, the head usher. Before the service, this usher should fill up the water glass for the preacher. The water glass should be cleaned and filled up with water and placed in one of the openings in the pulpit. When guest preachers are scheduled, you should check with them before the services as to what they want to drink. This usher should also help with the distributing of mail that is on the usher's table. He might be assigned to fill in other roles as well by the head usher. The main responsibility of this person is to count the number of people in the worship service, both in the auditorium and other classrooms, especially the nursery. A green slip is available in the folder at the usher's table to record the attendance. This slip has a breakdown of some of the classrooms which helps during the counting process, but the overall attendance is the only thing recorded by the church secretaries. In other words, sometimes during the count, a family might come in late with some infants or young children that might be going to their classroom. It's not necessary to change all the numbers of the various classrooms again, but just make sure the grand total reflects the latecomers. The best time to take attendance in the auditorium is when the congregation is seated. When the people are standing, singing a hymn, it's easy to miss some of the smaller children. However, sometimes this option isn't available until the preaching starts. If that occurs, be very careful of causing a distraction, as the congregation's eyes or ears should be focused on the preaching at that point. He should do his best to count silently and not by pointing fingers or a pen while doing so. The best approach is to take one section at a time and record that number on the back of the green slip and then add up all the numbers after each section and the foyer is completed. Make sure to count the video folks in the Bible Institute room and those in the child training room. After getting the count in the auditorium, count those that are in the foyer. When that is done, he needs to go to other parts of the building to get attendance in those areas. Since there could be some still coming in the main entrance while he is going to other parts of the building, a good practice is to ask the usher at the main door to keep track of the number of people entering while he is elsewhere. While doing the count in other parts of the building, all outside doors, besides the main one, should be locked. This includes the office door, the EBA door, and possibly the door outside the nursery. When all counts are done, he can sum up to get the grand total. It might be a good idea, especially on a Wednesday night, to wait a little longer to see if there are any more latecomers. When he has the final count, he can put the green slip inside the pastor's box besides the welcome center. Thank you for listening to my ugly voice.